All right, brings us to item number 8, the Big Waters Land Trust Strategic Conservation Plan, presented by Brooke Langston, Big Waters Land Trust. The purpose is to share the updated conservation plan for Big Waters Land Trust in Southwest Florida, which prioritises the protection of crucial nature lands, focus on water quality and flow. This relates to Fish, Wildlife and Habitat Protection Action 2, to encourage and support the permanent conservation of environmentally sensitive lands and critical habitat areas. And Action 3, assist in assessing and promoting the benefits of land protections and habitat restoration. Brooke.
Thank you. I was on, just to follow up to Kevin's presentation, when I was with Sarasota County, I did projects, and this work group was critical, very central and critical, relevant to what I was doing when I was with Sarasota County. Now that I'm with Big Waters and I'm focusing mostly on acquisition, it's not as relevant to me anymore, but I attended yesterday's meeting, as I said on the meeting, because even though the permitting and funding was a very heavy load of the conversation that we had yesterday, the rest of the meeting was really inspiring and uplifting and really exciting to hear the work that is going on despite the hurdles and the trials and tribulations. There was some really great work going on. So even if you're not an official member or don't feel like it's completely relevant to you, it's a great meeting just to hear some exciting stuff that's going on and look for ways to plug in, because as Kevin and Dave both said, Kevin and Mark both said, it's a collaborative group, and they're looking for ways for all of us to work together and plug in on different projects to make the dollars go further. So that's my little plug for yesterday. And the other thing I'll say is that luckily we ran out of time, and I didn't get to talk about the conservation plan because most of you in the room would have then heard it twice. So now you're only hearing it once, so that's fine. I started with Big Waters last September, and the conservation planning process was already well underway when I joined the group, which was disappointing to me because I really liked that process, and it would have been fun to have my fingers on it from the very beginning. But I'm really happy with the outcome and the product that we've got. This conservation plan is a year-by-year document. It's not a big glossy thing that we'll put up on the shelf and admire from afar, but it's on our desks, and it already is driving our work, guiding our work. A really central thing that came out of it is very focused focus areas, which, you know, when I worked for the county, it was easy to say, nope, it's not within Sarasota County, so we're not going to work on it. When your service area is Terracea Bay to Corkscrew Swamp, it's hard to say no sometimes because we want to save all of it. But these focus areas have helped with that a lot. So I'm sort of jumping around already. So if you can proceed. Real quickly, we're a 501c3 with 17 employees, about to hire an 18th. Be on the lookout for a new position coming out from us this fall. We've protected over 20,000 acres in 21 years, which totals 63 properties. We own 1,000 acres outright, which is about 900 too many for me. I don't have the ego in it that needs to own the acreage. I just want to protect it and then hand it off to an adjacent landowner who has the capacity and a bigger chunk of property that can just weave it into theirs and take it away from me. But we do own about 1,000 acres. And the benefit of that is it gives us a foothold and a stake in the game in 5 different counties right now. Next slide. So we planned the plan, and the part that was done before I got there was the conservation values, which drove the rest of the process. We worked with the shapers on the putting together of the plan. They didn't influence, as many of you know, they didn't influence the content much on this project, but they did help us put it together and make it make sense and do a lot of the data work for us. So the conservation values were first, those were staff generated, and we generated 10, and the board voted that down to 6 conservation values, and they ranked them. And then the same happened with the next next 3 items. Goals came out of the conservation values, staff generated, board narrowed and voted on. Same with the metrics and the focus areas. What we're working on right now, and those will stay internal. These are not board, the board will see them, but they're not going to approve them. The objectives and the key results are what we've been working on this summer to really set our work plan for FY26 slide. Our conservation values, which probably won't surprise anyone, are clean water for both drinking and recreation, besides obviously for bugs and bunnies, imperiled wildlife habitat, coastal resiliency, sustainable agriculture, access for all, which used to be called equitable access, but now we call it access for all, and carbon sequestration. We pulled, I think, 34 different data sources to figure out where the best areas were to work on those 6 goals, and we really hoped they would all overlap beautifully where the conservation isn't already happening, but it didn't work that way. The map on the right, I love. If anybody wants a copy of it, I can get that for you. I think it's beautiful. We did not take Gulf of Mexico off of it, although in some presentation, if Christine were here, she would have told me to take that off this presentation. But the dark green areas you probably recognize are what's already conserved, and sort of the mustardy colors, the lightest areas are what's already developed or not as desirable. The mustardy colored ones are the opportunities where we or some of our partners are hopefully working. Slide. And the goals just put verbs in front of the values. We're ensuring clean drinking water. We hope to protect, enhance, and restore lands that do all those good things to support our values. Slide. And then I didn't go through this, I didn't put a slide in for each of these, but as with all of your work, probably the value generated goals, and from those we've got measurable metrics. And that's what we're working on right now is numbers for 1 year and 5 years for what those metrics look like and where to work. Slide. Then we did a focus area analysis, which Jennifer and Dave are excellent at. We worked at the HUC 12 level, the hydrologic unit code, which is just different sizes of watersheds. That was a new term for me this year. So we worked at the HUC 12 scale, which is sort of creeks and bayous, and we analyzed 159 HUCs in our service area. And we used 3 different data layers. I won't read those for you, but different data measures for each of the different conservation values. Next slide. So the HUC 12s can focus on clean water. It's a nationwide standard that translates well across the nation. It's very data driven. Made it easy to set goals and community oriented. People can maybe not relate to they belong to the Charlotte Harbor, but maybe they get it that they are in the Gottfried Creek watershed. Next slide. Oh, I don't know what this slide means really. Looking at sure. So for each of the focus areas, we ran for clean water, for instance, we ran through what was the percent natural land cover, if there were headwater streams, and was it a drinking water supply? And if those are the parameters that we looked at for the clean water. And if it ranked high in those 3 things, where you see the blue dots on this map, then that weighed in on the focus areas for clean water. Next slide. And as I said earlier, I was hoping that it would just come out with these like 5 big, very clear areas where everything overlapped and that's where we should work, but no. The blue ones are drinking water. The pink ones are access for all. Green is brown is carbon sequestration, green is habitat, and I forget what color is sustainable ag, but that's on there too. And when you think about it, it makes sense that they don't overlap, because where we need more access is not going to be where we have sustainable agriculture. So that helped us narrow down further. Next slide. So green is what's conserved already, and blue is our current focus areas. The hucks are highlighted in blue. I'm sorry, the greater hucks that we looked at, the focus areas that we looked at, are highlighted in blue, and the ones we decided to choose are the darker blue. And I've got that map here that I can hand out before we leave, because it's, who doesn't love another map? Next slide, please. So these are the 9 focus areas that are in the dark blue over there. And these each ranked highest for those primary conservation values. Cape Coral is where we will work on public access. Cape Coral is Cape Coral people in the room, sort of a desert for both shade, as everyone knows, but also for access to good nature. And we hope to be able to help with that. The lower Myakka River is looking at coastal marshes and carbon sequestration. Again, you probably don't want me to read these all to you. From there, we chose 4 to work on for FY 26 and 27. And those were voted on by the board, presented by us and codified by the board. We're starting with Cape Coral, and they're each looking at a different value. So we're working on starting with Cape Coral for public access and shade. If anybody doesn't know, the Arbor Day Foundation and US Forest Service have a really great shade layer that just shows % shade for the whole country. And that's actually a driver of economics. The more shade in an area, the higher economics, and probably the more access people have to nature or to open space. It's a fascinating layer. I can send it to anybody if you want. The other data that we used for access was Trust for Public Land has a data layer that shows within 1, 5, and 25 miles of a park or some kind of open space. And we use that to drive where we were working for public access. Really, the data for this was great. So we're starting with Cape Coral, the Upper Manatee River, because that's really critical drinking water for Manatee County. If you know Manatee County, above our focus area there, you see Lake Manatee, which is their primary drinking water source for much of Sarasota as well. We didn't include that in this focus area because Manatee County Natural Areas Group is working really hard on acquiring land around and protecting land around Lake Manatee. So we're not going to focus there. We're going to put our efforts elsewhere. We work really closely with the LMAC folks, and so that was another factor in how we narrowed down focus areas. We're also looking at Corkscrew Swamp because of habitat and carbon sequestration. That dark blue down in the very bottom right corner is where we're working. That's primarily Camp Key Strand. And the Florida Wildlife Corridor people are excited that we're doing that. Tom Hochter is excited that we're focusing down there because that's just outside of the corridor focus areas. But it's that Camp Key Strand is really critical and currently unprotected. And what's our 4th one? Oh, somewhere else. Oh, Charlotte Harbor, duh. Focusing on the work that is ongoing with the Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Initiative. We're looking there at acquiring lands for habitat and carbon sequestration and protecting coastal sustainability. Next slide, please. So the criteria overall was that it was to choose the actual parcels was within a focus area that it's currently vacant, not developed. It's not yet conserved, and it's greater than 20 acres. Next slide. So the result was 1,300 distinct parcels covering 273,000 acres with 560 landowners for a total value of $2.3 billion, which, as I said yesterday, for most of our budgets, both professional and personal. That's just a mind-blowing number. One of my board members who works in many more zeros than I do routinely said, Brooke, that's only 2% of Florida's annual budget. It's not that much money. If they wanted to do it, we can do it. So that was, and that was just a couple months ago in the current reality of world finances. So that was encouraging. People who know a lot about money think that's not unsurmountable. Next slide. So we finished all the external content, which I've talked about already. And the internal content, most of that's all done too. No, it's not. We're working on the planning right now. The program fundraising and marketing plans are in process right now. That will stay internal. The stuff on the left is external. And we can share the GIS methodology and data layers if anybody's interested in that. Next slide. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk about this endlessly. I do have landowner lists for each of the focus areas, and there's a million different ways to slice and dice it. I'm meeting with lots of different folks about looking at the landowner list specifically. I met with Florida Conservation Group. I'm meeting this afternoon with Manatee County. I've met with the Florida Wildlife Corridor, looking at known entities on the list so that we're not tackling the same landowners and giving mixed messages or competing with each other. I'm not a competitive person about this sort of thing. I'm not worried about whose territory it is. I just want to get the land protected. So for those of you that are working in any of those focus areas and have maybe some landowner knowledge or some connections or some parcels that are near and dear to your heart, I'm happy to talk with you in person or over Teams or whatever. Question?
I got a question. Carbon sequestration. Would you give us an example of like what carbon sequestration involves? Because I'm ignorant about that.
Sure. So this is an interesting question that I had to figure out how to answer. My mom is 98 and still sharp as a tack, and my niece is 37 and is in carbon trading for the Nature Conservancy. And my mom said, Brooke, what does that girl do all day? What does that even mean? So I had to explain it, which was just a funny little non sequitur. For carbon sequestration, the best things in our service area and all of our service areas that are going to sequester carbon are the big old trees, cypress swamps, and muck soils. Up here, there's not a lot of carbon sequestration to them because our mineral soils, the sandy stuff that we've got up here primarily, doesn't hold carbon the way the Everglades and muck does.
Mangroves are involved in that?
Mangroves do, but nowhere near to the extent that a 100-year-old, 500-year-old cypress tree will do. And the soils that mangroves grow in, except for that top peat layer, I mean, other people in this room are much smarter about this than me, so anyone else chime in and help answer this question. But the mineral soils just don't hold carbon the way the muck soils do.
Right.
Anyone add to that? Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I had two things. I wanted to point out that there are copies of the conservation plan around the room.
Oh, sweet.
So people are welcome to pass those around. Take one if you want. Feel free to look at those. The other thing I wanted to know, you mentioned you're coordinating with other, of course, land protection groups, Trust for Public Lands. We had just yesterday written a letter of support for a property they're pursuing called the Peace River Longleaf Pine, and of course it goes off when Pinelands project in DeSoto.
Okay.
And it's just like southwest of Arcadia.
Okay.
Right on the river there. And it's a big private property that they have put up for Florida Forever. I was wondering if that was something you all were engaged with them on, or if there is like ongoing communication between you and TPL, because I know they're very active in some of the areas that you have chosen as focus areas.
So I do. Erica Hernandez.
Yep, it's Erica.
She's somebody that I routinely say, hey, I just got a call from,
There you go.
John Smith, who wants to sell his grandfather's farm. Julie, Florida.
Lawrence.
Yeah, Julie Morris works very heavily in the Peace River Arcadia area. I
Mhm.
don't step on her toes. So I
Yeah.
talk to those kind of folks regularly and just say,
Right.
somebody's grandmother
Coordinate.
called me and wants to sell the farm. Are you working on it, or shall we work on it together?
Well, they're looking for letters of support, so maybe even if it's
I'll reach out to
Big
Erica.
Waters Land Trust writing a letter.
Sure. I'll reach out to Erica. Thanks. Any other questions?
Yes.
Could you go back to the map on the screen?
This one? Or?
Yeah, that one there. You mentioned about the connection at the south about Corkscrew.
Uh-huh.
What are those other two big connections there? The one looks like, is that Highlands or
Show me on here. It's
Well-
the same app, so we changed, the blue was hard to differentiate from the lines, so in this final map, the one that's in your hands, it's the same, but we just changed the solid blue to the lighter green on here.
okay. So like the one the next big blue spot above the yeah, that one there. What is that area?
So that's Jack's Branch and Long Island Marsh. And honestly, it's not one of our primary focus area. It's not our first focus area. I'm not familiar with it yet.
Okay. And then how about the other big tract of land above like the I guess you'd be like, yeah, this one right here.
the Mayaca.
Yeah, so that's kind of out, correct me, those who know better, but I think that's Horse Creek and Ono is out there. But also looking at species, imperiled species and sustainable ag. But east of the Mayaca, the general Mayaca area, north and east of the general Mayaca area.
Okay.
I appreciate your total value and your board members' comment that that's just 2% of the state budget, right? And one of the things I'm interested in is like, I came up with a $1.4 billion number for restoration of the county over the next 10 years. Like, those are real numbers. They seem really large to us, but they're not that big in the grand scheme of things. And that's a societal value. Like, that's a values-based decision not to put 2% of the budget towards land acquisition. And I think that probably 90% of our constituents want clean land, clean water, clean air, and healthy lands. But that economic thing is like a competing objective, something that we use in decision analysis. Those are competing objectives, right? So how do we overcome that, that kind of economic incentive by a very small portion of the public versus what a larger portion of the public sees as their future and the upcoming generations. They want to have something. They don't see that there's going to be anything left for them, and they want to see that. But the CHNEP does a great job of outreach and education, and I think we all do in some respects. But really trying to flip the script on those values so that people understand that, like, this is attainable. We can do this.
And the public here continuously says they support it. Look at the referendums, the Conserve Collier, the Lee Seek, the Lee County 2020. Charlotte County doesn't have one yet, but they're talking about it. The LMAC funds, the SLIC funds, those all get renewed every single time they come on the ballot. Like 87%, 83% of the public in these very conservative counties votes to tax themselves to buy land in their counties. And then the commissioners say, well, we want to protect, that's not really the voters in Collier County, the commissioner said, well, the voters didn't know what they were voting for. They didn't realize this is what the money was doing. They want the money for other things, but the voters do want it. The communities want these, they share these 87%, 83% of voters want money spent for lands. So to that end, I'm also meeting with county commissioners and city councils, sharing a similar, I tailored this to the different, whichever geographic area I'm in, I tailored the slideshow and we're sharing it with all the different county commissioners and city commissioners and having, different levels of engagement and success, interest.
Those politicians are responding to those few people.
Yes.
I have a question, well, a couple of them. Hi, Molly. So one of the criticisms of buying public land from a lot of elected officials, especially in the county, is first of all, it comes off the tax roll. And so they've lost that revenue. And secondly, then it becomes a burden depending on who is granted the easement to maintain it. I would like to know what kind of information we can transfer over to our elected officials to say, that's, it provides, an economic valuation for recreation and everything, and, the number of jobs it may provide for the enhancement and conservation of these things. And secondly, it's implied in here, but as we're all very well aware of, there's a heightened interest on protection of land for flooding. And so I didn't know whether that was, somehow you could sneakily emphasize that a lot of these places are in the floodplain and, an economic valuation on the services they provide.
I definitely talk about that, particularly with Sarasota, Manatee, and Hardy County commissioners, and Northport City Council. They didn't get it, but trying. But yeah, if what's interesting, if those values had been voted on 3 months later, like maybe in October or November of last year, I'll bet flood protection would have been highlighted more overtly. But now we just are able, as we all know, it's very easy to tie it in and highlight it as appropriate. As regards to property values, who did that? Lee County, the Conservation 2020 Committee, and the Conservancy of Southwest Florida down in Naples each did studies when they were passing their bond referendums, their ad valorem referendums, and demonstrated that property values around protected lands go up. So the tax base in lands associated, neighboring, newly protected lands, those property values go up, increasing the taxes that are generated. So that's one of the arguments that we use to say that it's not taking, it's not harming the general tax revenue. And the other thing is just reminding them that the reason we have taxes here, the reason that people are here is because the environment is beautiful. The water is clean, the beaches are nice, the woods are beautiful. And that's what drives everything.
So is that a service that you provide, when you're soliciting support from elected officials, is that your reasoning for acquiring land is that you can use a broad statement, if you conserve this land, you will see a 34% increase below it. So is that a service you provide, or is that something that each county individually should come up with?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So the CHNEP commissioned an economic valuation study, and we did it by county and by basin. And we used real world revenue data and had a team of economists spend several years gathering that information and crunching the numbers to actually quantify the amount of economic activity, real estate, tourism, commercial fishing, recreational fishing. So it's all there, and we broke it into fact sheets, and all of that heavy, huge report and each water, basin and county fact sheet, economic fact, is on our website, so that people.
Or how do you break it down?
It is looking at it again in those chunks of by county or by basin. So you can print those off and take those, and that is meant to be a resource to all of our partners to utilize that. The other thing I'd mention is we have run up several different times, different land protection related initiatives up through our policy committee. And it's, you know, important to understand like all the different perspectives. I feel like overall generally positive around preserving, you know, environmentally sensitive lands. But the issue that you brought up, especially in our heartland counties, was highlighted as far as loss of tax revenue to those rural counties and cities. And we in turn looked at the state and federal payment in lieu of tax programs, which are programs that theoretically are supposed to offset any loss of tax revenue when land is put into public ownership. And we found that, number one, we could not even find people related to those programs who were available to come present on those programs after a year of trying. But we also understood from them that they're just underfunded, so they don't even want to highlight them because that would just build up expectation and disappoint a lot of people because there's no funding to actually fund to offset that loss of revenue. And so I think that that to me is the other side of the same coin for land protection, is at the same time we're advocating for the preservation of these lands, we need to be advocating for payment in lieu of tax programs to be fully funded so that these rural counties and cities are made whole and are not further disadvantaged.
Right.
They're already disadvantaged and they cannot stand to lose any tax revenue in some of these inland counties and cities. So I think that's one thing that I have tried to relate back to all the land groups, and I have not yet seen any land group take that up as an initiative.
I like it. That's
But it's really critical because that's if that were addressed, I think you would see a lot more support. I will say the other thing that is going on is the heartland counties are like, hey, we're Everglades restoration, we're habitat, Florida wildlife corridor, we're this, we're that. Everybody wants to preserve, like we need economic development and opportunity ourselves. And why does the coast get to build out?
right.
And then try to shove every environmental objective into our counties.
Right.
So I do think there's sensitivities there that need to be, and real concerns that need to be addressed. As,
Payment for ecosystem services. I mean, the coast should be paying somehow the inland counties for the ecosystem services that they
and
provide.
there's no mechanism really
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, now there's talk about water quality transfer, mitigation credits, things like that. But that's a double-edged sword because that's allowing more development in areas that are already heavily developed and then trying to transfer that to inland communities. And sometimes the hot spots, the pollution hot spots, the stormwater hot spots are in the coastal areas. So you don't want to just develop out and lose those opportunities to retrofit or improve in the coastal community. So it's very complicated, but I do think that, you know, please use the economic valuation study that we commissioned, and we hope to update that. It's not that old, but you know, we do plan to update that when we can. It's a huge cost and effort to put that one of those together for 10 counties, but it's there, and I just really encourage you all to take advantage of these resources and call upon us. We can write letters of support for land conservation. We routinely do. So, you know, whatever we can do to do, you know, support your efforts, please call upon us.
When you're ready to recommission that study, reach out to your partners and ask, we would pitch in money for that. TPL might, you know, all your partners might pitch in money because it will benefit all of us directly. So let us know when you're ready to redo that.
Yeah, and it's probably more cost efficient to do it
right
together than to each person be doing these separate studies. So yeah, I think that's a good point. We'll do that. Thank you.
The Florida Parks and Recreation Association has a calculator for economic value of adjacent properties as well,
Oh, wow,
based
cool.
on distance and one block, two blocks, and type of recreational access, if it's passive or active and stuff like that. It's the FRPA.
Cool, thanks.
Can you repeat the name, please?
It's the Florida Recreation and Park Association, FRPA. Like they have it broken down that proximity to a park improves home values, 20% for homes adjacent to the park, 10% for less than 500 feet, 5% for less than 2,000 feet. And then in addition, 10% for active parks, 33% for active and passive recreation areas, and up to 70% for passive recreation within the park. So,
Wow.
I used that as part of a master's thesis that I did. So I knew it was out there. I just had to find it.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.